It's your bear here, and let me just get to the point right away. I am sorry that I slept on Control for so long. It is a great game. It's fun to play, has a solid story, tastes great, and leaves the players wanting more. Well, at least it did for me. In short, it is a 3D Metroidvania, third-person action horror shooter without survival elements. Control is a game that's all about, well, control. It's about the feeling of helplessness in the face of an overwhelming force, the struggle to fight back, the manipulation of authority, the weight of command, and all those other fancy thesaurus words for control. There are no QuickTime events, no escort missions, and no end to the trippy action. This game really reminds me of an old FPS called Fear, except, it's better in just about every way. A lot of what makes it better comes from being released more than a decade after Fear, but it's more than just about the looks and the gameplay. There's a sense of quirkiness and style to this game that Fear didn't have, and above all, Control doesn't take itself too seriously. The game pulls you into its world, and that's a good thing. The world of Control is interesting, and also a little bit scary. There's a fair amount of tension, and that helps keep you on your toes, but there's also legitimate scares and frights throughout the game. The controls in Control, the controls if you will, they are really good and allow the player to do just about whatever the player wants to do. Want to fly around the room shooting people with a machine gun? Check. Want to jump across a bottomless pit and punch some big rock guy in the face? Yeah, you can do that. Want to hurl a desk at a wall just to see the dent it makes? Sure, Control has you covered. And those enemies, they're not just cannon fodder. The enemies scale with you, maybe even faster than you. The enemies are kind of like donkeys in that they are surprisingly deadly. This helps to make the game feel challenging, but it also incentivizes the player to come up with new strategies when playing the game. I'll be honest, I died a lot in Control, more times than I can count. Because it was a lot of times, not because I can't count very high, but in all of that, I never lost the urge to keep going, the push to move forward and try again. And that is one of the things that makes Control excellent. But the best part of Control isn't the gameplay, it's the setting, the story, and the game's overall style. Control gets really trippy from here. It's kind of like, what if Doctor Strange 3, Doctor Strange replaces Scully on the X-Files while reading the SCP Foundation wiki? That's totally an MCU movie, don't look it up, trust me. The story follows Jesse Faden, who goes into a government building and may or may not immediately take a gun off of a corpse. Necrokleptomania aside, Jesse becomes the person in charge. And, like most Americans, Jesse tries to solve all of life's problems with a gun. But I mean that in the best way possible. The main story is surprisingly straightforward and simple, despite the game's otherworldly settings. There's a ton of exposition to pick up along the way in the form of text-based story bits. I didn't read 95% of the ones I picked up, but I still enjoyed the overall story, even without them. I personally thought there was a missed opportunity on how the main character Jesse interacts with the player. The developers set up this cool opportunity to have a direct relationship between the main character and the player, but they kind of explain it away with story beats later on. That for me was a little disappointing. The art direction in Control is top-notch. The visuals and sound design just ooze style in this game. It makes Control a serious spectacle to play, or even just to watch. Honestly, the ashtray maze alone is so freaking outstanding, I could just play that section on loop. If Control 2 isn't just Ashtray Maze the game, well, I'm still gonna play it, but I will be a little disappointed. And the sound design is incredible. In the beginning of the game, everything is so quiet. There's very little in the way of ambient noise, and that just makes it so much more unnerving when the enemies are around. It really makes the player feel as if they're alone against a monstrous threat. And as the enemies become more prevalent and the story begins to develop, the sound and visual aspects of the game ramp up to the next notch. It is so well balanced and just builds that way throughout the entire game. Another aspect I really like about the game are all of the horror elements. Control slides back and forth between light horror and third-person action-adventure so seamlessly. While the game starts with tons of dread and apprehension, those beats are quickly traded for a powered person shoot 'em up. But just when you think you have the game all figured out, it will reset your expectations and quickly put you in your place. There are a handful of strategically used jump scares. They don't use them too often, and they tend to make them count when you least expect it. Also, a lot of the puzzles in Control are really good. The game doesn't hold your hand, even with the puzzles that are required for story progression. Some of them really need to be thought out and have intention to make work. Solving some of the puzzles in Control really made me feel like I was accomplishing something. Now for some negatives. There aren't a lot, and most of them are actually pretty nitpicky on my part. I encountered some weird artifacting issues with some of the icons on screen, and also some jittery starts when unpausing or coming out of the menu. It was mildly annoying, nothing really game-breaking. I saw some other people on Reddit complaining about the same two issues. It may be specific to playing the PS4 version on a PS5, I don't know, but I would have expected these to have been ironed out by this stage. One thing I think the game would really benefit from is a cover system. You can kind of duck behind objects, but it doesn't really work as good cover in my opinion, and to return fire, you just completely stand up and negate your ducking. Instead of seeking cover, the player tends to need to be very aggressive, constantly on the offensive when trying to fight enemies in the oldest house. Another improvement, in my opinion, would be the ability to mark locations on a map. This is 2022 or, 2019, depending on when you're playing the game. But come on, that's something that has been around for ages at this stage. You have to move around the map quite a bit. Like I said, I compared it to a Metroidvania at the start of the review. So being able to mark locations that you need a power-up or some extra part of the story to be able to go back and double check would really help prevent you from just stumbling around trying to find them again later on. Another one of my pet peeves in gaming is modern games seem not to let you save anymore. I know Control has an autosave, but I regularly found myself trying to fast travel just in an attempt to trigger the autosave. Just let me save the game when I'm not in combat, please. And finally, the inventory system is pretty annoying. I regularly found myself having to go back and delete items I had picked up just so I could pick up more items. It gave me flashbacks to Horizon Zero Dawn. Not my favorite. So that's it. That's my 2.5 years too late true review of Control. Just proving that I need to hurry up and work through my gaming backlog. Let me know in the comments what you think about Control, and if there are any other games you would like me to play or talk about in the future. As always, like, subscribe, push all the buttons really. If something breaks, I think YouTube just sends me a bill. I don't really know how this works. And thanks for watching.